Hello, I'm Dr. Hassan Tohid once again with an amazing topic as usual, how to conduct research during pandemic. How to conduct research during pandemic. Ever since COVID-19 came, everything changed. The way we worked changed, the way we studied changed, the way we did everything changed. Now, of course, research and the modes of research and how we conduct research has also changed. Now, how do we go about it? How do we do research or how do we conduct research during pandemic? Let's discuss that. The way things are going, looks like pandemic will last a little longer than expected, and we still have a lot of cases of COVID-19 every day, everywhere around the world. Nowadays we have Omicron, and I initially felt, just like everyone else hoped, that COVID will go away really soon. So I never thought that this will become such a long journey. Therefore, I decided to create a video that can guide on how to conduct research during pandemic. If you are a researcher, scientist, research associate, research fellow, whatever position you are at, this video is for you. Now, how do we conduct research? Of course, the answer is that it depends on your study design. So let's look at the study designs first. As you see in the study design pyramid, we have animal studies and in vitro studies at the bottom, right? So if you are conducting in vitro studies, if you are a principal investigator or if you are a research assistant, you now have to be in the lab, right? So the best approach is, if you really need to be in the lab, keep social distancing and be there one person at a time. If you have multiple people in the lab, one person at a time is the ideal approach, and divide responsibilities, divide the time and responsibilities. If there is an urgent need that everyone should be in the lab, then decide it through text messages and phone calls that at this time we all will be here, but we will maintain strict social distancing. That's how you can conduct your research. Now, the specimens in the lab apparatus, whatever you are using, everyone will use it. Now, one person uses it and he leaves, and the other person comes in and he or she uses the same apparatus or the same lab instrument. Now, this can be a risk. So it is very important that every lab should have sanitizers, and it is a responsibility. It is the responsibility of the person who is working in the lab right now to clean the desk. Wherever the next person is going to be, don't go on that desk. Don't go near that place where the other person is supposed to be. Now, let's say the other person is supposed to come at your seat, at your space. Now, clean it before you leave. It's your responsibility. If the other person acquires infection, who is responsible if you did not clean it? So make sure you clean it. Now, once you have left, now the new person who comes in, it's a responsibility of this new person to make sure you still clean this place before you sit. You never know that the other person who came, although it was his responsibility, but maybe as a human, he forgot. So make sure you clean that place, you clean that seat, you clean that desk, you clean the apparatus, and now start to work. Now, when it comes to writing, you need writing meetings. You don't need to be in the lab. You can do that on Zoom. Everyone is doing everything on Zoom. You can be on Zoom. And the data collection that was done in the lab, and now you have collected that information and you keep sharing it with everyone on Google Drive so that everyone can see it in the lab. Your team can see it. And when the time comes to start to write, now divide the responsibilities, and it is the responsibility of the principal investigator or whoever is the in charge. Maybe the research fellow has been given the responsibility of writing the manuscript. Whoever, whatever your system is, whatever your culture is, whatever your university culture is or the lab culture is, or your colleagues have developed a custom or culture that, okay, this person's responsibility is to write and this person's responsibility is to collect data. So make sure you all communicate very well, and Google Drive will help you with the data. And now the remaining data that you search, because every research has two kinds of data: the empirical data that you collect in the lab and the data that you collect from previously published sources. So now to do data search through PubMed and other resources, you don't need to be in the lab. You can do that at home. You can do that sitting at the ease of your home, to collect data sitting home. Now, this is for the in vitro research. What about animal research? You do the same. And remember, while dealing with animals, you have an additional responsibility. please still wear masks. You never know. Nobody knows everything about COVID, and every time we hear new things about COVID, so you never know that this Omicron, maybe it can affect the animals just because you did not wear masks. So while even if you are alone and you are dealing with animals, you wear masks. It is extremely important to protect animals. You cannot put lives of animals at risk by not wearing masks. And make sure you still clean everything before you leave, and when you come in, you clean the spot. If you have fever, if you have symptoms, if you have anyone at your home who has symptoms, don't come to the lab. And that applies for in vitro research coordinators, research assistants, research associates, anyone who is dealing with in vitro research study or animal study. Now, what's next on study design pyramid? We have ideas, opinions, editorials. You don't need to be in the lab. You just sit on your computer at your home and start collecting data. Remote research concept. That's how everyone is doing research nowadays. You don't need to go to the lab. Just do your data collection sitting home and start writing your ideas, opinion article or editorial. If you are a senior professor, schedule your time and do it. Everything is online. If you don't have the access at home of the indexing, if you don't have the access of the databases at your home, contact the university and tell them the situation that because of COVID, you need that on your personal computer as well. You need the ID. You need whatever your university system is. Many universities, they just give you the ID and you can actually access the databases sitting at your home as well. So if it is there, if this facility is there, that's very good. If not, then contact the university and tell them the situation that you really need to write and publish this paper as soon as possible. So you need the access. Now, the next study design is the case study. Now, case study, you need to have a case. If you need to have a patient, now, if you're going to a hospital to collect data, you again have two options. Either you go physically there if it is allowed by the hospital to talk to the patient, collect the data, collect the information, but make sure you do that while maintaining social distancing. Now, secondly, if it is not allowed, if you are a student and the hospital is not allowing you, although you are vaccinated, but they are not letting you in. Now, what do? You now simply just request a telephone conversation with the patient. That should be enough. And the data, you can get that data on Google Drive and through any HIPAA compliant email service. You can do that. The next thing, the next study design is the observational studies. Again, anyone who has the responsibility to directly communicate with the patients, wear the mask and keep social distancing. And of course, then you collect your data. Secondly, if that is not allowed or it is not possible, then what do? You arrange a telephone call or email conversation. Yes, many cross-sectional studies are done through emails. So yes, you can do it. Now, the next thing is the clinical trial. What do? Same thing, wear mask and keep a distance, and whoever has the responsibility to administer the medication, wear the mask and the gloves. Make sure you take proper precaution. Once that is done, you have the data. And as I told you before, the same approach, the team approach, that you divide time, who will come when, who will come first in the lab, who will come second in the lab. And if there is an urgent need that everyone should be in the lab together, then maintain the social distancing and wear masks and gloves if necessary and needed, and then leave the lab as soon as possible. Don't stay there for unnecessarily long time and leave as soon as possible. Once that is done, you have collected the empirical evidence. Now it's time for the review evidence, the literature review. Then you, of course, sit home and do that. Whoever has a responsibility. If everyone has a responsibility, collect some data. One person will collect some data, the other person will collect some data, the other person will collect some data, and everyone will share the data on Google Drive, and everyone will know what is happening. So it is possible. Now, the next thing is, the next study design is the review articles, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses. Can you do that sitting home? Absolutely, 100%. 100% of systematic review and meta-analysis can be done sitting home. If you don't have the access to the databases, you can just rely on databases that are freely available, or if university has given you the access, that's very good, wonderful. But everything is 100% online. You can do it. All the data is online. You don't have to go to any patients or animals or to lab apparatus or instruments to collect data for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Everything is online. So yes, pre-COVID and post-COVID, literature review writing, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, narrative reviews, ideas, opinions, editorials, letter to the editor, they will always be the same. Before COVID, we just relied on computers and internet, and after COVID, we relied on computer and internet. The changes will only be done in the empirical research while collecting empirical evidence. So this is how you conduct your research during pandemic. I hope pandemic goes away as soon as possible, and we all are praying and hoping that pandemic goes away. But if it doesn't and stays a little longer, then this video is going to help you. Thank you. Keep learning, keep watching.